"Ma'am, this is a working pier, not a bus stop. Grab your little bag and go find your husband's ship somewhere else." The voice came off the brow before she'd taken 3 steps onto Pier 12. Boatswain's mate first class, Trent Mahaffey, brassard on his arm, petty officer of the watch, 31 years old, and certain the 400 feet of concrete in front of him belonged to no one but him. He had a coffee in one hand and an audience of 2 behind him, and a voice pitched to carry to both. The woman did not answer. She kept walking. Gray morning, 0741. The harbor moved against the camels with a sound like slow breathing, and the cold came off the water in a flat sheet that found the gaps in a coat and lived there. She wore a plain dark coat, no markings, and a worn canvas sea bag rode one shoulder. A contractor's lanyard hung at her chest. It read, in small letters, OKAFOR, M. Fleet Readiness, C5. Nothing else. No rank, no command, no reason for any sailor to look at her twice. She had walked harder piers than this one. She let the cold do the talking. "You hear me?" Mahaffey set the coffee on the rail. He liked the word, working. He used it again. Working pier. You readiness people couldn't read a tide table. Where's your escort? You don't walk Pier 12 without an escort. That's not me being difficult, ma'am. That's the rules. Don't have one. 2 words. Flat. He laughed, and the 2 juniors behind him laughed because he did. The guided missile destroyer beside them sat high and gray against the sky, 405 feet of steel. Mooring lines run out to the bollards in long catenaries, the bow flag stiff in the wind off the water. The woman's eyes were not on Mahaffey. They had already left him. They walked the after mooring line, frayed at the chafing gear, the wrap gone slick and feathered where no one had re-rigged it in weeks. They climbed the hull to the fire main riser on the main deck and stopped. A valve, chained open, against every regulation in the book. She filed it the way other people breathe, without effort, without comment, the fact simply moving from the world into the ledger she kept behind her eyes. "Hey." Mahaffey snapped his fingers, twice, the way a man snaps at a dog he expects to come. "I'm talking to you. I know." "Then move. There's a working party coming through in 10 minutes. And I'm not babysitting a lost contractor while they do." She stood where she was, weight even through both feet, the cold pulling at her coat, the bag strap a dark against her shoulder. She took a small notebook from an inside pocket and wrote one line in it, unhurried. And that, the writing, not the standing, was what made him cross the rail. He came down the brow fast, all shoulders, the brassard catching the gray light. "Give me that." He reached for the notebook, missed, and took the sea bag instead, ripping the strap off her shoulder in one motion. "Bag lady's been told twice, you don't write me up, I write you up. Don't." One syllable. She did not raise her voice. She did not reach for the bag. She did not even turn her body toward it. He grinned at the juniors. He held the bag out over the rail a moment. Theater. Daring her to lunge. She didn't. So he turned and threw it. A flat arc out over the water, the worn canvas turning once in the air, and the harbor took it with a slap that echoed off the hull. It floated for a breath between the camel and the steel, going dark with water, and then the weight of it pulled it under. Slow, the strap last to go. The 2 juniors laughed out loud. Somewhere down the pier, a forklift idled, a low diesel knock. She watched it go under. She did not step toward the edge. She looked at her watch, the face turned in toward the inside of her wrist, the way a sailor wears it on a bridge wing so the dial doesn't flash, and wrote a second line in the notebook. And her hand did not hurry, and her face did not change. 40 feet away, on the quarterdeck, an old man in coveralls had stopped chewing. Command Master Chief Royce Tarrant. 60 years old, 40 of them at sea. a command master chief who had watched 10,000 sailors come aboard and go ashore and learn to read every one of them in the first 10 seconds. He was not looking at the bag. He was looking at her, at the stillness, at the way she had timed her own humiliation to the minute and written it down like a position report. The bag was gone. The juniors were laughing. And the only man on Pier 12 who was not smiling was the one who had just watched a stranger record the exact time his ship embarrassed itself. She did not ask for the bag back. She asked Mahaffey a question instead. When was the afterfire main last hydro-tested? He blinked. What? The afterfire main. She nodded once, not at him, at the riser on the main deck, the valve chained open above the waterline. When? How would you even? 8 months over. She said it without heat, the way a person reads a clock to a child. The test tags painted over, on the riser. Behind you. Somebody put a coat of haze gray over an expired tag instead of testing the system. That's not laziness. That's a decision. You don't know that. But his voice had lost its edge, and he knew it, and so did the 2 juniors who had gone quiet behind him. I know paint. She nodded at the riser. Fresh haze gray, 1 coat, brushed not rolled, over a raised metal tag. You don't paint over a current tag. You paint over one you don't want red. 8 months over hydro, in a salt environment, on a system that's the difference between a galley fire and a funeral. That's not a tag, petty officer. That's a confession somebody hasn't been caught making yet. He turned and looked. Then he turned back, and something in his face had changed. The way a man's face changes when the ground reports back wrong under his foot. The 2 juniors had stopped laughing. The harbor breathed against the camels. Up on the quarterdeck, the old master chief set his coffee on the log desk and came down the brow with the unhurried walk of a man who has just decided to spend the rest of his morning on one thing. Master Chief Tarrant. He stopped an arm's length from her. He did not look at Mahaffey. And you are, ma'am, OKAFOR. Just OKAFOR. For now. The brow shifted under them, the small living movement of a ship working its lines against the camels, and he watched her ride it. Wait even. No hand on the rail, the deck moving and the woman not. 40 years had taught him 100 ways to read a sailor, and the first of them was the feet. New sailors fought the deck. Old ones let it move them. Her feet did not fight anything. Her feet knew steel. You logged that fire main, he said. It was not a question. 0746. She did not look at the notebook. The mooring line aft is feathered at the chafing gear. It'll part under load inside a month. The rat guards are rigged backward. They'll funnel a rat aboard instead of stopping one. And there's a forklift about to back over a fouled float line the operator can't see from his seat. Tarrant turned. Down the pier, the forklift was reversing toward the splash point, where the bag had gone in, beeper going. The operator's head turned the wrong way over his right shoulder. A swimmer's float line trailed off the camel into the path of the rear tire, taut and yellow against the wet concrete. Hold! Tarrant's voice cracked across the pier like a parted line. The forklift stopped dead. The operator leaned out, found the fouled line a yard short of his tire, and went the color of the morning. A swimmer's float line in a forklift's path was nothing, on paper. A frayed wrap on a mooring line was nothing. A painted tag was nothing. But Tarrant had buried enough sailors to know that the sea never kills you with one big thing. It kills you with a stack of small ones nobody bothered to fix, on a quiet morning, when everyone was busy laughing at a woman with a bag. He looked at the stopped tire, a yard from a parted afternoon. And then he looked at the woman who had seen it from 40 feet, while pretending to lose an argument, and the question in his chest got heavier. Mahaffey found his voice in the silence. "Master Chief, she's a contractor refusing to clear the pier. I already called it in. Harbor security's inbound." "You already called it in?" Terrence said it quietly. He did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. "I want her off, before this turns into a thing." The woman had not moved through any of it. Some people mistake stillness for fear. It is the most expensive mistake a sailor can make, and the sea has collected on it 10,000 times. She watched Mahaffey the way a person watches weather they have already planned around, without worry, because the planning is done. "Call it in," she said. "Log the time when you do. Log all of it." Mahaffey's jaw worked. He wanted a fight he could win, and could not find its edges. He keyed the radio on his hip and turned half away to make the call sound official. And while he did it, she looked once more down the long gray hull, reading it, bow to stern, and Tarrant watched her read it. Then the old Master Chief walked back toward the quarterdeck, carrying a question he did not like the shape of. Who reads a painted-over fire main tag from 40 feet? Who calls the minute it happened without looking at her watch? Who stands on a moving brow like the steel was poured for her? Mahaffey could not make her leave, so he made her a story. "Bag lady's still here," he told the two juniors when the radio call was done, loud enough to carry the length of the pier. Threw her sea bag clean off the pier and she didn't even chase it. Didn't flinch. Just stood there writing in her little book like it's a tide chart. He laughed, and Petty Officer 3rd Class Wade Schuler laughed with him, and Seaman Apprentice Davis Crane, 19, 2 months aboard, laughed because the others did, and then caught himself doing it, and didn't like the taste. "Somebody get a broom," Schuler said. "Sweep the pier, hazard to navigation." It is a particular kind of brave, being cruel to someone who will not fight back. It costs nothing, and it feels like strength. Schuler had never learned the difference, and Mahaffey had built a whole pier on not teaching it to him. The laughter fed itself the way a grease fire feeds itself, low and easy, until somebody decides to put a hand in it. The knot of them grew. 3, then 4, then a couple of hull techs drawn over by the noise. A pier is a small town, and a small town loves a story with a loser in it. They gave her the name Fast, the bag lady, and wore it in like a glove, and Schuler, passing close on his way to nowhere, put a shoulder into hers. Not hard. Hard enough to make a point in front of the others. She rebalanced without a step. The notebook did not move. She wrote a line. That was the thing that started to work on Crane, not the shoulder. The notebook. People who get bumped look up. It is the oldest reflex there is, the body checking the threat. She did not look up. She wrote, the way a man logs a sea state, the way you record a thing that has already happened and no longer requires your attention. "Go move her along," Mahaffey told him. "You, Crane, go earn your pay for once." Crane crossed the few feet of concrete, with his hands half up and his heart not in it. "Ma'am, you really gotta. You can't be out here without—" She looked at him. Once. Not unkindly. There was something in the look that was almost patient, the way a person is patient with someone young who has not yet done the worst thing they are about to be asked to do. "What's your rate, Crane?" "Seaman Apprentice." He answered before he meant to, the rate coming out of him on reflex, the way it does in front of someone you have not yet decided to fear. "Deck." "How long aboard?" 2 months, ma'am." "And how long has the after-fire main been chained open?" The question landed quiet and exact, and Crane felt it go through him like cold water down a collar. He looked at the riser. He looked back at her. He had no idea how she knew he knew. "A while," he said, before he could stop it. "Since before I got here. Petty Officer Mahaffey says it's faster for the washdowns." "It is faster." She wrote a line. Right up until the morning it isn't. You like it? He didn't know what to say to that, because the honest answer was that he had stopped liking it 3 weeks ago, the day he understood how Pier 12 actually ran, who decided what got written down and what got thrown in the water, and something in the flat, patient way she'd asked made the laugh die for good in his throat. He took a step back. He did not move her along. He could not have said why, except that the woman had looked at him like she already knew his name and was disappointed on his behalf. Behind him, Mahaffey was already at the quarterdeck log, writing, "Civilian refusing lawful order to depart Pier 12, aggressive toward watchstander." The first fabricated lines in a logbook that would, in time, be read aloud in a room with a flag on the bulkhead. He pressed hard with the pen, scoring the paper. He even smiled while he did it. Up at the desk, Master Chief Tarrant read the words upside down as Mahaffey wrote them, and said nothing, and looked at his own watch, and pocketed the time the way you pocket a thing you will need later. You have watched this. You have stood at the edge of a crowd while someone got laughed off a pier, a parking lot, a break room, while a loud man built a story and the warm crowd handed him the bricks, and you said nothing, because it was not your fight, and the laughing was easier than the truth. If that is sitting in your chest right now, good. That is the right place for it to sit. Subscribe to Honor Tales and stay exactly where you are, because what the woman they are calling the bag lady does next is the precise reason this channel exists. Mahaffey escalated from a story to a system. The radio call became a request, and the request grew teeth. Harbor security, Pier 12, a civilian contractor refusing a lawful order to depart. Aggressive, no valid escort. Possible unauthorized presence near a warship. He added aggressive himself. He added near a warship himself. He liked how the words sounded in his mouth, official and grave, the vocabulary of a man with the weight of a base behind him. None of it would survive contact with the truth, but he did not know that yet, and the not knowing was the whole shape of the morning. While they waited for the security detail, the woman walked the brow's safety gear. She did it the way an inspector walks anything, which is to say she did it once and missed nothing, and she said it aloud, low, to no one, except that Tarrant had drifted close enough to hear, and was listening now, the way you listen to a doctor reading your own chart. Bro stanchion's missing its doubler. She laid 2 fingers flat on the steel, where a reinforcing plate should have been welded, and was not. Rat guards rigged backward, cones pointing the wrong way. They'll funnel one aboard, not off. After fire main chained open. Fall protection nettings tagged out of service and still rigged under the brow, so somebody signed off a repair that never happened. And the watch turnover this morning said the brow was sat and safe. A pause. One of those is a mistake. 5 of them is a culture. She moved down the brow as she said it, one fitting to the next, never twice in the same place, her hand finding each fault the way a blind man finds a familiar room, a frozen shackle, a safety pin replaced with a bent nail, a life ring whose line had rotted to a memory of line. She did not write any of it down with anything like urgency. She wrote it the way the tide comes in, patient, total, leaving nothing dry. Tarrant felt the cold go down his spine, and it was not the wind off the water. Contractors did not know doubler. Contractors did not call rat guards by the direction of the cone. Contractors did not say the after-fire main the way she said it, like the name of someone they had served with. He had spent 40 years learning the difference between people who used the words and people who lived inside them, and the woman in the plain coat lived inside them, had clearly lived inside them longer than the boy throwing her bag had been alive. Contractors don't know doubler, he said, low, almost to himself. No, she agreed, still looking at the brow. They don't? The security detail arrived in a white truck with a light bar. 2 of them, boots loud on the concrete, and Mahaffey performed. He stood straighter. He pointed. He used aggressive twice more and near a warship once. The woman produced nothing. No badge, no orders, no rank, no defense at all. Only the contractor lanyard turned out for them to read, and a single sentence delivered to the senior of the 2 in a tone of mild, almost gentle instruction. Log the time, petty officer. All of it. The call, the response, every minute you spend out here. You're going to want that record, and you're going to want it accurate. For your sake, not mine. It was not a threat. It landed nowhere near a threat. It landed closer to a kindness, and the security petty officer, 26, and used to people either shouting or pleading, did not know what to do with a woman who did neither. Tarrant did. He stepped to the security man, said 2 words, "Hold one," and walked to the quarterdeck phone and dialed the captain's cabin from memory. He stood with his back to the pier, so no one could read his mouth, and he spoke for 11 seconds, low and fast, and he set the phone down with the care of a man handling something that might go off. The woman watched him do it. She did not ask who he had called. She already knew the shape of it, the way she knew the shape of everything on that pier. She checked her watch, turned inward against her wrist, and made a small note. And the wind came off the harbor at 14 knots and pulled at the pages, and she held them flat with one thumb and kept writing. Somewhere above the pier, high on the ship, a weather door opened and shut. The Master Chief was on the phone with the captain. The inspection had already started. And Mahaffey, still pointing, still saying aggressive, was the only person on Pier 12 who had not yet understood what was happening to him. Tarrant went off the record. He found Mahaffey at the rail and kept his voice down, the way an old chief keeps a thing between 2 men, so it does not have to become a thing between many. Walk it back, Trent. Master Chief? Apologize. Get a boat hook. Turn to a working party. Fish that bag. Dry it out. And pray. Right now. Before the rest of your morning happens to you. Mahaffey actually grinned. For the bag, lady? Master Chief, come on. She's a contractor. She doesn't have an escort. She doesn't have a badge. She doesn't have anything. She walked onto my pier and refused to leave, and now she's somehow the victim. You don't know what she has. Tarrant looked at him a long moment, the way you look at a young man standing in the middle of the road, who cannot yet hear the train he is standing in front of. That's the whole problem with you, son. You think because you can't see a man's rank, he doesn't have one. 40 years I've been doing this. You want to know the most dangerous people I ever met? They came aboard quiet. Every single time. The loud ones tell you everything they are in the first minute. The quiet ones let you find out. Mahaffey laughed him off and went back to his audience, because the audience was warm and the Master Chief was not. So Tarrant studied her instead, from the distance of the quarterdeck, the way you study weather you cannot change and had better understand. The watch turned inward on her wrist, the way she moved at clean intervals, a step, a pause, a note, a step, like a woman who had once learned to mark time in a place where time was the only thing keeping people alive, where you counted seconds out loud so 190 men could hear that someone still had a grip on the clock. The way she read the ship and never once read the crowd. The crowd did not exist for her. The ship was the only thing in her eyes. And a name came up out of 40 years of sea stories, the way a name will. A fire. 2005. A destroyer in the Gulf that should have died, and did not, because a lieutenant, a woman, the damage control assistant, had taken the main space when the chief engineer went down, and held a burning ship for 9 hours on a steady voice and a fire plan. The surface fleet had never stopped telling that one. There had been an award, a medal you did not see twice in a career, a photograph in a ceremony, a younger face, calm. He was not certain. He looked at the plain coat and the contractor lanyard and the dark patch of water where her bag had drowned, and he was certain enough that his hands had gone cold. He crossed to her one more time. "Ma'am, there's coffee in the shack, out of the wind. You don't have to stand out here in this. I see more from here." She did not look at him when she said it. She was looking at the ship, bow to stern, the way you look at someone you have been sent to judge. "Thank you, Master Chief." She was exactly where she wanted to be. She had been all morning. Terrence stood beside her a moment, 2 arms' lengths off, and looked at the same ship she was looking at, and tried to see it the way she saw it. He thought he caught the edge of it. A mooring line a month from parting. A fire main 1 galley grease fire from a tragedy. A watch bill signed by men who had stopped believing anyone would ever check. He had walked past all of it 100 times. He had told himself 100 times that it was somebody else's division, somebody else's pier, somebody else's tag to pull. The woman beside him had not walked past any of it. That, he understood now, was the whole difference between a Master Chief and a Vice Admiral. Not the stars. The stars came later. It was that she had never once in 31 years let herself walk past the thing that was faster to ignore. "Permission to fix some of it before you finish your inspection, ma'am," he said quietly. "Not to hide it. To fix it." "No," she said, and there was almost warmth in it. "You'll fix it after, Master Chief, on the record. So the next pier learns from this one." A pause. "But I'll note that you asked." It was Crane who found him then, alone by the rail, the boy's face gone tight and pale. "Master Chief, the bag thing this morning, that's not the first thing." He swallowed hard. "There's a pattern out here. The log doesn't match what actually happens on the pier. Petty Officer Mahaffey runs it the way he wants, and then writes it down the way he needs it to read. Safety gear, watch turnovers, all of it. I've got dates. I can show you." Tarrant looked at the boy and at the woman reading his ship and out at the gray water and felt the whole morning turn under him like a deck taking a sea on the beam. You feel it too. The old chief has just placed her, and he has gone pale, and you want to be standing on that quarterdeck when everyone else finds out. Subscribe to Honor Tales right now, because the next part is the one this channel was built on. The part where you, and only you, learn exactly who the woman they have been calling the Bag Lady has been the entire time. Here is who she was. Her name was Marin OKAFOR, Vice Admiral, United States Navy, 3 stars, Deputy Naval Inspector General. She had flown into Norfolk the night before with no flag on her car, no aide at her elbow, no placard, no welcome, because she had learned across 31 years that rot hides from rank. Put a flag officer on a pier, and the pier stands up straight and lies to you in a clean uniform, every line faked square, every tag freshly painted. Put a quiet woman with a worn bag on the same pier at 0741, and the pier shows you exactly what it is when it thinks no one who matters is watching. She had decided this ship's fate before the coffee on Mahaffey's rail had gone cold, and the ship did not yet know it had spent the morning deciding it for itself. She was 53. She had been 32 the first time a ship tried to die under her hands. 2005. The North Arabian Gulf. Lieutenant OKAFOR, damage control assistant aboard a guided missile destroyer, asleep in her rack at 0200 when a fuel line let go in the main engine room, and the space went over to fire in under a minute. The chief engineer was first into the smoke and first to fall, dragged back out through the scuttle cooked and breathing wrong, and then there was no one senior left in the space, and there was a lieutenant at the hatch with a hose team and a choice that would not wait for anyone to come tell her what to do. She took the fire. 9 hours. Spell it out the way she always did, every year on the date, alone. 9 hours, 4 repair lockers, 3 reflashes, 1100 degrees coming off the bulkheads in waves you could see bending the air. She ran the boundaries. She set the firefighting. She put a 32-year-old voice on the open circuit and made it steady because 190 sailors were listening to it in the dark. And a steady voice was the only thing she had enough of to give all of them at once. And she lost one. Damage Controlman 3rd Class Eli Trujillo, 19 years old, the youngest man on her hose team from a town in New Mexico she could still name. He went back through a scuttle for a shipmate who had already made it out the other side, and the space took him. And when they pulled him to the repair locker, his skin was wrong and his eyes were strangely calm, and he asked her, through the burns, whether the ship was going to make it. She told him yes. She carried him herself, through the scuttle and up one ladder, both arms, because she would not put him down, and she would not let anyone else carry him. He died the next morning in a bed ashore. The ship lived. The Navy gave Lieutenant OKAFOR the Navy and Marine Corps Medal in 2006, and in 20 years, she had never once thought of it as hers. It was his. She just kept it for him. There is a thing the surface fleet does not put in the citations. After the fire, after the medal, after the slow promotions and the commands and the flag, OKAFOR had requested every single year to be the inspector nobody saw coming. She had turned down the staff jobs that came with a car and a placard. She had asked for the piers, because a fire main chained open on a Tuesday in Norfolk was the same decision as a fuel line nobody had pressure tested in the Gulf, made by the same kind of man. For the same reason, it was faster, and nobody who mattered was watching. She had spent 20 years making sure that somebody who mattered was always, eventually, watching. Quietly, with a worn bag and a contractor lanyard and a notebook. She carried his challenge coin, 20 years of it, brass worn smooth on one face from a thumb that found it in the dark. It was in her coat pocket on Pier 12, and now, in the lee of the seawall 100 yards on where no one could see her face for a moment, she took it out and closed her hand around it until the edge bit. "Almost done, Eli," she said. Quietly, to the coin, to the boy, to the water. Then her phone buzzed once against her ribs. Lieutenant Bex Almeida, her flag aide, through the main gate with the official inspection party, 3 minutes out. The no-notice window was about to become a formal one. The ship's last unguarded morning was over, and so was Mahaffey's. She put the coin away, squared the coat against the wind, and turned back toward Pier 12, where a petty officer was still telling 4 sailors and 2 hull techs that she was nobody. The white truck and the radio and the warm crowd had made Mahaffey feel watched, and being watched made him need to look in control. And needing to look in control in front of an audience is exactly how a man walks himself off a cliff. He could have stepped around in his sleep. "Crane," he pointed. "Move her. Hands on if you have to. She's trespassing on a working pier near a warship, and I am done asking nicely in front of everybody." Crane did not move. "Petty officer, I really don't think we should—" "I didn't ask you to think. I gave you an order." "I'm not putting hands on her." The boy's voice shook and held at the same time, the way a thing holds right before it either breaks or proves it never will. "No, petty officer. I won't." The pier went quiet around the word. Schuler stopped grinning. The 2 hull techs found somewhere else to look. Even the wind seemed to drop a knot, the way the air goes still before weather. A direct order had been given, and a 19-year-old had refused it standing up, in the open, in front of everyone, and the refusal hung there on the concrete, like a thing that could not be unsaid. "You'll regret that," Mahaffey told him. "You'll regret that the rest of your enlistment." "Maybe." Crane did not move. "But I won't put hands on her." So Mahaffey did it himself. He crossed the concrete in 4 hard steps and took the woman by the upper arm, fingers closing through the coat, and turned to march her down the pier the way you would haul a drunk off a brow at Liberty's End, in front of the security detail, in front of the quarterdeck watch, in front of the command master chief, on the watch, on the record, in front of every witness the morning had gathered for exactly this, the bright line. He had been walking toward it since 0741, and he crossed it with his hand clamped on the upper arm of a 3-star admiral. She let him. She let his hand close. She let the grip register on every set of eyes on Pier 12. Let it become a fact that 2 security officers and a master chief and a deck full of sailors had all watched happen. And for the first time that morning, the woman in the plain coat smiled. Small and not warm, the smile of someone watching the last brick set into a wall they have been building, patiently, course by course, since the moment they stepped onto the concrete. "There it is," she said. Tarrant moved faster than a 60-year-old man has any right to. He stepped in, closed one weathered hand over Mahaffey's wrist, and lifted it off her arm, not gently, not by half. "Stand fast, petty officer." The volume of it changed the pressure of the air on the pier. Heads came around from 40 feet. The forklift operator killed his engine. "You take your hand off this woman, and you plant your boots, and you stand fast." Mahaffey wrenched free, furious now, the fear not yet arrived, riding the last seconds of a confidence that no longer had any ground under it. "I'll write you up too, Master Chief. I don't care how many years you've got on that chest. She's a contractor. You're protecting her for no reason. And I will put both of you on report before lunch. Trent." Tarrant's voice had gone very quiet, which on an old chief is the loudest thing in the world. "Son, I'm going to give you one more second. Look at her. Not at me. At her. Look at how she's standing. Look at what she's not doing." He paused. "In 40 years, I have seen exactly 2 people stand on a pier like that. One of them is buried at sea. Look at her, Trent, and shut your mouth before you say the one thing you can't take back." Mahaffey did not look at her. He looked at Tarrant, and he opened his mouth to say the one thing he could not take back. The ship's 1MC crackled to life above them, a wash of static, and then the pure, flat tone of a system about to speak. The topside watch came to attention. Down the brow, a hand reached for the ship's bell, and a white-gloved arm drew back to strike it. And every sailor on Pier 12 turned toward the quarterdeck, every sailor except Mahaffey, whose hand was still hot from where it had gripped the inspector's arm, and who turned last, and a half-second too late to be anything but the last man laughing. The 1MC's words rolled down the brow and out across the concrete, flat and formal and final, the way the sea is final. "Naval Inspector General, arriving." The bell struck, clear and hard across the water. Side boys formed at the head of the brow in 2 quick ranks, white gloves snapping to the rails. Ensign Joy Abernathy, 23, the quarterdeck watch officer, came to attention so hard her heels cracked on the deck plate like a round going off. And down the brow, fast and certain, came Commander Diego Salcedo, the ship's commanding officer, 44 years old, moving like a man who had been handed a single sentence over the phone 90 seconds ago that had rearranged the entire architecture of his day. He walked past Mahaffey as though Mahaffey were a stanchion, a piece of the pier, a thing bolted down and painted over. He stopped in front of the woman in the plain dark coat with the contractor lanyard and the drowned bag, and he came to attention, spine vertical, and he raised his hand in a salute that he held. "Admiral OKAFOR." His voice carried the full length of the pier, on purpose, every syllable placed. "The ship is ready for your inspection, ma'am." For a moment, nobody on Pier 12 breathed, but the harbor. Beside Mahaffey, close, Master Chief Tarrant said it low and exact, the way you tell a man the one thing he most needs to hear and least wants to. Vice Admiral Marin OKAFOR, 3 stars Trent, Deputy Naval Inspector General of the United States Navy. A beat to let it find bottom. You threw the inspector's sea bag into the harbor this morning. You put your hand on her arm on your own quarterdeck watch, in front of God and the security detail and me. Mahaffey's face went through it in order, and the whole pier watched every station of it. Confusion first. A small, reflexive shake of the head. No, that's the contractor. That's the bag lady. This is a mistake. Somebody's confused. Then disbelief as the salute held, and the captain did not lower his hand, and the side boys did not break their ranks, and the word admiral simply refused to go away or mean anything else. Then recognition, arriving all at once and from every direction, the whole morning replaying behind his eyes at double speed. The fire main, the doubler, the rat guards, log the time, all of it, for your sake, not mine. The quiet woman who had told him to write down every single minute, because she had known, from the first step onto the concrete, exactly whose minutes they were going to turn out to be. Then horror, plain and total and venal. The color draining out of his face the way the water had drained the color out of her bag, sinking out of him until there was nothing left in his face at all but a 31-year-old boy who has finally understood the true size of the thing he has done with his own 2 hands. OKAFOR returned Salcedo's salute, crisp, unhurried. Then she stepped onto the brow of the ship that had laughed at her, and she stood on the moving steel with her weight even through both feet, the deck shifting and the woman not, and she turned, at last, to the petty officer of the watch. Petty Officer Mahaffey. Her voice did not rise. It had never once needed to. You are relieved of the watch, Master-at-Arms. 2 Masters-at-Arms were already moving up the pier. They took Mahaffey by the elbows, and this time the hands closing on a man's arm were lawful, and the falsified log on the quarterdeck desk and the fire main chained open against every regulation in the book were no longer his to talk his way around. They were evidence now. They had been evidence since 0746. Ma'am. Mahaffey's voice cracked on the word, the brassard suddenly heavy on his arm. Ma'am, I didn't know who you were. She paused on the brow and looked back at him, and for the first time all morning there was something in her face, though it was not anger and it was not satisfaction. It was something closer to tired. That was the point, Petty Officer. Her voice did not rise. You didn't know who I was, so you showed me exactly who you are. That's the only honest watch you've stood all year. Schuler had gone the color of the concrete. The 2 hull techs had drifted backward toward the warehouse line, as though distance could erase the last 20 minutes. Only Crane stood where he was, near the rail, watching the woman he had refused to lay hands on, and when her eyes passed over him, she gave him the smallest nod, the kind a person gives across a great distance to someone they have decided is going to be all right. The side boys held their ranks. The bell's last note died out over the water, and the woman whose bag was still drying somewhere against a piling walked up the brow of the destroyer that had spent the morning calling her nobody, and not one sailor on Pier 12 could lift his eyes to meet hers. The reckoning came fast, the way reckonings do once the first brick comes loose. By noon, the inspection party had the quarterdeck logs spread across the wardroom table under the fluorescent light, and the discrepancies the Admiral had clocked at 0746 were line items now, numbered, initialed, photographed against a ruler. The fabricated entry, civilian refusing lawful order, aggressive toward watchstander, sat 3 lines above a watch turnover that did not match the actual condition of the brow by any honest reading. The afterfire main, chained open. the brow stanchion missing its doubler, the fall protection netting tagged out of service and still rigged, signed off as repaired by a man who had never touched it. A pier run on appearances and volume, and above Mahaffey, a leading petty officer and a division chain who had let it run that way for months because the morning muster always looked squared away from inside the warm shack. OKAFOR signed the findings without raising her voice a single time. A formal investigation opened before the watch changed at noon. Mahaffey would answer for the log, for the fire main, for the hand he had put on a flag officer's arm. And the men above him, the ones who had taught a pier to lie and rewarded it for lying well, would answer for the lie itself, which was the larger crime and the one she had actually come to Norfolk to find. Then she did the thing inspectors almost never do. She called a witness forward to be thanked. Seaman Apprentice Crane. He came across the quarterdeck white-knuckled, certain to the bone that he was in trouble for something he had not yet identified. He stopped in front of 3 stars and could not get his eyes up off the deck plate. "Look at me, sailor." He did, with effort. "You were the only man on this pier who told the truth this morning when telling it cost you something. Your petty officer gave you a direct order to put your hands on a stranger, and you stood there at 19 years old, and you told him no. Then you walked to your master chief, and you told him what you had been watching for weeks." She let it settle into the boy and into everyone close enough to hear. "Remember this exact feeling. That, what you did, not what the loud ones did, is what the uniform is. Everything else is just cloth." Crane was named in the findings as the cooperating witness, in writing, in a document that would follow him the good way for the rest of his career, the way Trujillo's name had followed her. She had been a 3-star the entire time. The ones who threw her bag, who christened her the bag lady, who put a hand on her arm to march her off in front of a crowd, they did not merely lose. They built her case for her, brick by patient brick, with their own hands, and then they signed it and entered it in the log. If that landed somewhere in your chest just now, that is the entire point of this channel. Subscribe to Honor Tales, because there is always another pier, and there is always someone standing on it who has decided that quiet means weak. Salcedo found her at the rail before she left, the inspection done, the ship a different place than it had been at dawn. "Ma'am, may I ask one thing? The fire main. How did you know it was chained open, from the pier, before you ever set foot aboard?" OKAFOR looked out at the gray water a moment, at the chop running before the afternoon wind. "I've been reading engine rooms," she said, "since one of them tried to kill me." She did not explain it. He did not ask her to. Something in how she said it told him the whole story he would never be told. That evening, Wednesday, dusk, coming on purple over Hampton roads, the Admiral stood alone at the harbor seawall a quarter-mile from Pier 12. The wind had finally dropped. Her sea bag sat dry at her feet now, recovered by a boat hook and a quiet, chastened deck division who had not been able to look at her either. She held Eli Trujillo's challenge coin in her open palm and turned it once. Brass worn smooth. 20 years of a thumb in the dark. Her phone buzzed. A number she knew. A number that had been dead for years. Struck from every roster she had ever read. Attached to a name she had grieved and folded carefully away and never expected to see light up a screen again. 3 things came across, in order. A line of text first. "Still afloat, Lieutenant?" Then a single photograph. The bow of a destroyer she did not recognize, riding in a foreign dry dock under hard, unfamiliar light, shadows falling the wrong way for any yard she knew. Then 2 words for a place. Gulf of Aden. She stood very still at the seawall, the way she had stood all morning on the pier, the deck of the world moving and the woman not. She read it 3 times. She closed her hand around the coin until the edge bit into her palm, and she looked east, toward open water, toward the place where the last of the light was going out of the sky. Every soldier carries a story that few ever hear. Listen with your heart. Thank you for staying and watching. Subscribe to Honor Tales for more.